And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of man, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. Genesis chapter 6, verses 3 through 4, Exegesis. My spirit shall not always strive with man. The Hebrew word for strive here, yadon, can mean contend, govern, or remain with. So my spirit shall not contend, my spirit shall not govern, my spirit shall not remain with man. God is declaring that his spirit, which restrains sin and convicts man, will not keep doing so forever in a world that continually resists him. We're supposed to resist the devil that he would flee, not resist God. So this reveals God's long-suffering patience, but also his decision to set a limit. God's suffering is long-suffering. It's eternal. But God desires obedience rather than sacrifice, indicating God has limits. So Isaiah chapter 5 verse 4 says, What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? He did everything that he could. He's saying, what more could I have done that I didn't do already? Romans chapter 1 verse 24 says, God eventually gives people over to their sins when they reject his spirit. When they reject his spirit consistently, this is the unpardoning sin, the continual rejection of Yahweh Elohim. When he's consistently, like Revelation 3:20 says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man, if any woman hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and sup with him and dine with him and he with me. So the consistent rejection and not opening of the door is the unpardonable sin, the rejection of the Holy Spirit consistently. Romans chapter 1 verse 24 says, God eventually gives people over to their sins when they reject his spirit. So for that, he also is flesh. Back to the text. God says, speaking of man, he is also of flesh. Humanity is dominated by fleshly desire and corruption. Genesis 6:5 says that when God looked on the land, he saw that every thought of the imagination of their heart was only evil continually, elaborating on the corruption. Flesh here, mortality, weakness, and sin-prone nature. For he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passeth away and cometh not again. Yet his days shall be 120 years. All right, so let's dive into this. This has a dual application. There's two applications to this. Yet his days shall be 120 years. The first one, a lifespan limit of 120 years, like Moses. Moses lived 120 years. After the flood, human lifespan generally declined, eventually stabilizing around 120 years. Or the application means a countdown to the flood. God granted 120 years of grace before judgment. This fits well with Noah's preaching in 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 5, where he is called a preacher of righteousness. I believe it's a dual application. I believe it's both, because obviously the humanity of man declined after the flood. Usually they only lived about 120 years. Also, it was about 120 years when God spoke to Noah. When he was building, he had that 120 years to build and to preach. So it has a dual application when it says his days shall be 120 years. Got it. Most commentators favor the second view. Okay. God gave the world 120 years of mercy before destruction, but it could be a dual application. I believe it's a dual application. Verse 4, commentary. There were giants in the earth in those days. The Hebrew word for giants is Nephilim, from the root nephal, meaning fallen ones. So this also has two interpretations. We're going to cover this. Often translated as giants. They appear again in Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, when Joshua takes the spies and they go into the land and they say that we are as grasshoppers to them. They are giants. So it fits that narrative. Where the Israelite spies, they describe the sons of Anak, and they were giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So it fits the narrative. And also after that, okay, suggests Nephilim appeared both before and after the flood. Raises the question, were they physical descendants of fallen angels or simply mighty rulers or tyrants? So when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men. So we talked about this in the last video. It could either mean the Hebrew word Benai Elohim, it could either mean the fallen angels or the descendants of Adam or the descendants of Seth. Repeats the point from verses 1 and 2. If it is sons of God or angels, then the Nephilim are hybrid beings. These giants are hybrid beings. They're mixed with angels and humans. Or if they're just sons of God from the line of Adam, from the line of Seth, then the Nephilim are violent warriors, leaders of men of power who gained a legendary reputation and worldly influence. So either they were hybrids, God, half angels, half humans, or they were just mighty men. The same became, let me know what you think in the comment below. Let me know what y'all think. The same became mighty men, men of renown. The Hebrew word for men of renown, strong ones, warriors, or rulers. So that within and of itself doesn't necessarily indicate that they were angels. Could be a reference to ancient kings or conquerors whose violent reputation spread. Their fame was earthly, not godly. That's why Nimrod was a mighty hunter against the Lord. A lot of interpretations say he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, but the actual Hebrew says that he was in opposition. He was against the Lord, indicating the Tower of Babel and Nimrod and the confusion of the language and all that. So the theological reflection, let's get down to the main point of Genesis chapter 3 verse 4. What does it mean? The actual practicality of it, the theological implication. Verse 3 teaches that God's spirit is patient but not endlessly permissive. It has limits. God has his limits. He's a human. He's an individual. The Son of Man is a human. He has a heart. He has a mind. He's a living being. He's a living spirit. So he's not just this ball of energy that doesn't have a conscience or that doesn't have feelings. This is where consciousness and feelings and emotions were derived from, the foundation of it. So God's spirit is patient but not endlessly permissive. Like, once again, he desires obedience rather than sacrifice. So yes, he is long-suffering and his patience is eternal, but we have limits. We have 120 years, remember, if that. So God works with us according to our limits. So verse 4 shows how corruption produces men who are celebrated for strength, violence, or fame rather than godliness. A pattern that repeats throughout history. Once again, we talked about Nimrod. Together, these verses explain why the flood was necessary. Unchecked sin corrupts unions. Unchecked sin corrupts unions. So check your sin, brothers and sisters, in a world glorifying in power instead of holiness. Genesis chapter 6, verses 3 and 4.